Hello and welcome to the Masters Swimming Podcast, available on all the major podcast platforms and on YouTube. I'm Joe Malone, and this week I'm joined by Loughborough University's Director of Swimming, Andi Manley. So thanks for coming on the podcast, Andy.
Hi, Joe. Thanks for having me.
I want to start actually by saying that we met at the Etwall Eagles competition last November, and I was quite taken aback because you were just really polite. And when I told you about the podcast, the first thing that you said to me was, "Here's my number. If you need anything, just let me know." And so I just want to say thank you for that because you didn't have to do that, and I thought it was very nice of you. So I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's a pleasure. Not at all.
So Loughborough University is, everybody knows it. It's one of the main bases for British swimming, as we know, but it's also got one of the best offerings for sport generally across, universities in the UK. You've been in the role that you're in now as director since 2018. So talk to us about what your role entails as director. So I assume you're still on the deck coaching on a daily basis.
Yeah, that's right. So the directors of in the performance programs at Loughborough, some do coach, some don't. Some are purely like a strategic or like a performance director type role for their sport. So I do coach. It's the part of the job I enjoy the most. Working with the athletes. I think the director side of it is more strategic in terms of forward planning and trying to hit the aims of the performance programs within Loughborough and the university as a whole. But it's the being on pole side, working with athletes part that sort of excites me the most.
No, that sounds good. And do you have other coaches that you work with that I guess you are sort of in charge of, or you head up?
Yeah, so I line manage 3 other coaches we have that are full-time members of staff. We've recently appointed like a program coordinator, or I guess like a team manager role, somebody who can really drive the sort of the behind the scenes, the admin side of the program. And then beneath that, one of the things that really makes Loughborough Swimming tick is the support services. So we're really fortunate to have a lot of members of staff that add that sports science support for the program. Now, they're all multi-sport. That's the way Loughborough Sport works. So it's a very busy kind of like environment, so like, for instance, our physio will also be working with men's and women's football and perhaps a rugby team. Our physiologist also works with athletics. So there's always a lot going on, but we are supported well from a sports science point of view as well. And so my job is to line manage those guys as well. And then kind of overall, the team is 85 swimmers. So we're a big program in terms of senior swimming. So it's my job to hit the performance plan and what we're trying to achieve as a program, but also the strategic aims.
That sounds great. And how does British Swimming and the university, as 2 separate entities almost, how do they align in terms of, I guess, pool time and any sort of integration?
Yeah, so a large number of the national centre athletes are also students.
Right.
I say a large number, probably about 50% of them study. And so when we go to the British University Championships, which is taking place next week up in Sheffield, they'll all come and be part of the Loughborough University team there. It is a busy pool. We have an 8-lane 50-metre pool, but there aren't many minutes in the day where it's not being used. So, for instance, like a typical morning might be like 5:15 till 6:45 would be like what we call like our development squad, the university development squad. Then our high performance group would swim 6:45 till 8:45, and then British Swimming would be in 8:45 till 10:45, and then bit of a gap in the middle of the day where other users are in the pool, and then probably the reverse of that in the afternoon and evening. So in terms of day-to-day collaboration, there's not a lot of crossover with the British Swimming National Centre and what we're doing with our programme. They've got their mission, they've got their goals they're working towards. We've got ours, but the coaches all get along good. There's some sharing of ideas. There's the athletes, a lot of them would live together, or study on the same course. So there is that element of sort of collaboration, but we also have just the schedule and the goals we're individually working towards.
Yeah, that's amazing. You're saying that the kind of the first squad are in at 5:15, and these are students. When I take myself back to when I was a student, there was no way I was getting up at 5:15. I was more likely to get in at 5:15 than get up at 5:15. So it's a totally different mentality. It's fantastic.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think one of the things Loughborough did a few years ago, which has helped with that, is they do have a dedicated like halls of residence for like elite athletes, not just swimmers, but across all sports. Because you're right, if some of our athletes are getting up at 4:30 to get ready for their morning session, well, yeah, the person in the room next door might have only got in an hour ago, and because that is a normal student life, you're right. And so that was a really good initiative that the university brought in a little way back. So the majority of our first year students will go into that halls of residence block. And then from then on, typically head out into renting houses, etc., and year 2 onwards.
Yeah. Am I right? You were a student at Loughborough yourself?
That's right. A long time ago now. So I studied there. I did my degree. I did my master's degree. My wife was a swimmer and a student there. That's where we met. And so that was a big reason for always wanting this, the job of being a coach with the program. It was something that when I did graduate and finally left, it was always sort of the thing that I put top on my list of jobs I wanted to do. And so I'm very fortunate to be in that position now as director of swimming, where I can keep driving the program forwards.
No, that's fantastic. So let's kind of go through your coaching career so far then. So apologies if I've missed any out here, but I've got it down as Swindon Dolphins, Daventio Excel, Swim Ontario, and Loughborough. Is that correct, or is there only that I've missed there?
No, that's it. You nailed it.
So from a swimming perspective then, how do they each differ, or do they differ, or the principles of coaching a squad of people pretty much the same no matter where you are?
Yeah, so that the first role in Swindon was like straight out of me, effectively, leaving Loughborough. An opportunity came up there to take on the program. Now that was a huge club in terms of numbers and range. So you had everything from kids who would start in swimming lessons from the first time they'd entered the water, right the way through to a really big, vibrant masters team. And as head coach, I guess my role was to sort of oversee all of that whilst coaching squads within it. So I think the way you described it then is exactly right. Ultimately, you're working with people and you're coaching a person. It doesn't matter whether, there's somebody that's trying to qualify for their first ever county championships, or like I'm at now at Loughborough, we're trying to get people to win Olympic medals.
Sure.
The challenge is bigger, I guess, in a way, but it's all relative for the person you're working with. But you're coaching a person, and there's a lot of transferable skills, and the training sets might be different, but how you communicate, the softer skills and what you do, that's exactly the same.
No, I completely agree. And I'm glad that's kind of how you think with coaching, because I think that's really important no matter what age you are, even if you're a child or a 50-60-year-old master swimmer. Was it always coaching for you? When you were at university, did you always want to be a coach? Was that the path for you?
No, not at all. I think the biggest problem with me is I wasn't entirely sure what I wanted to do. And so I kind of got to the end of my degree. I did my degree over the normal 3 years, and kind of was at a point where I'm not really sure what I want to do. I was still enjoying my swimming, albeit not as successful as most of my teammates around me at Loughborough, but I was doing okay. And so then I enrolled on a master's degree, which I did part-time. So I figured, let's do a master's, keep swimming, and in that time I'll figure out what I want to do. Coming probably into the last part of that and still not 100% sure. And it was at that point that I'd started doing my coaching and teaching qualifications, usually in like Easter break or during the summer. I'd started with, back then it was like assistant teacher, club coach, and then I think the final one was called ASA coach. All very different now, but this was back sort of like early 2000s. And got to the end of that point and still wasn't 100% sure. And it was just, I guess, by a bit of chance that this job was advertised in Swindon. My parents we lived in a town called Marlborough, which is about half an hour away from Swindon. And it kind of just like added up that this was a good opportunity to go into something like this. Still not 100% that that's what I wanted to do long term. But then as soon as I got into that, and as soon as I got into that role, luckily I was appointed. That was for me was I knew that's what I wanted to do. The buzz of doing that, the excitement of preparing athletes for competitions, helping them develop, seeing the progress they made was something that really excited me and still does now.
No, that's really cool. Then, so then it's Daventure Excel next, right? What years were you there? Because I'm from Belper, Derbyshire, so I know Daventure reasonably well, and I knew a lot of swimmers that were there, kind of around my age group. So, for me, it was like Rebecca Harrison, Richard Sellers, the Lovett brothers. I think. Yeah, were you there around that sort of time?
Yes, the first two you mentioned there were probably just a tiny bit before me,
Okay.
but yeah, the Lovett family were involved. In my time there, all three of them swam at some point with me in that period. But yeah, so that for me was 2009. So I kind of then had been at Swindon a long time. I'd taken them to a point where we were doing well. We had national age group medalists. The club, in terms of things like what is now Arena League, were doing great. I think we finished third in like the Western Premier Division behind like Plymouth and Millfield, which was an amazing achievement for a club that hadn't had a lot of success in that competition. But what was really exciting for me was that performance end. So the opportunity came up at Daventure, which was, as you know, like I guess like a county performance squad, a way smaller program than I was used to in Swindon, which was about 400 to 450 members.
Wow.
Daventure was like 45 members, but the focus was more on, I say high performance, more like the performance end of age group and youth swimming. So we were expecting to be competing successfully at nationals, and the big thing we did there really well, I felt. I took over from a guy called Mark Rose, who'd done an amazing job setting it up. And then we took a lot of pride in the fact every year we were putting people onto like the Great Britain European junior teams or European Youth Olympics, and we created a lot of international swimmers through that period, and gained real momentum with the athletes that did that, many of whom have gone on since to represent Great Britain at a senior level at Commonwealths, Worlds, Europeans, and Olympics. So that for me was a real exciting time. Different challenges. Because a club of 45 with 20 plus hours of pool time a week, isn't a wealthy club, and so there are other challenges there in terms of the income generation strategies we needed. But a really enjoyable time in terms of me stepping up as a coach into that international arena.
And I was going to ask, how did you find the difference there? Because I guess at Swindon, whilst you'd have had swimmers that were really serious about the sport, you'd have also had a lot of swimmers who were there for fun, socialising. But Daventure is a different ball game. Yes, you want to still have fun, but you're all there because you're serious. And so, did you feel the shift in mentality when you went there?
Yeah, it was quite an eye opener when I first went in. The first few weeks with the sort of the shift in terms of what the athletes could do, and the sort of the, not professionalism, because we're still talking about coaching kids, but just that the high performance behaviours that I guess Mark Rose had instilled in them, that they were all there 30 minutes before every session to do pre-pool. They all stayed for 20 minutes after each session to stretch and roll out. Just that level of performance started to nudge up, and so that was quite an eye opener. There was now an element of support service to what we did. More comprehensive S&C program rather than it being a bit haphazard, and that it was across the whole group, and just the focus went up. Attendance straight away was higher. So yeah, there was a noticeable shift for me, but it was one that I loved it. I knew straight away it was a good move to have made, and again, fortunately, the success came with it, and the program grew and grew in terms of the results we were getting.
Yeah. So then you decided to up sticks and move to Canada. So talk me through that one. Was that something you wanted to do from a life point of view, or was it specifically because this role came up for swimming?
Yes, a bit of both, I guess. It was always something when I started getting into coaching, I thought, that would be a really exciting thing to do, to coach overseas. Now, for me, it'd have had to be an English-speaking country. I'm not, I don't know any languages. So like Canada, Australia, the US would have been, what we were looking at. And I think by that point, so that was, I started at Daventure in 2019. So this was sort of, getting towards early 2015 where I knew that this opportunity was coming up. So part of it was, people, right place, right time kind of thing. And part of it was that this would be an exciting thing. Now, it was a tough decision. We were at a point where, Daventure was going really, really well. But such is life. This opportunity came up at that time, and we had to make a decision on what to do, and went for it. felt it was a good move to move out to Toronto and kind of go into this new program effectively. So it was set up as a provincial youth academy in a brand new facility. We had 2 10-lane 50-meter pools,
Wow,
plus a 6-lane 25-meter pool that was the diving pit. It was an enormous venue. Indoor running track, 2 gyms, climbing walls, all the recovery rooms you wanted. Ice baths, heated, like hot tub type things, and anything in terms of what you needed for high performance, it was there. And it was alongside their national centre as well. And so again, I guess a little bit of a brave step in terms of, could we set a program up there with some of the challenges around that? But something that I'm really glad that I did do, albeit ended up only being for 1 year.
Yeah. And so how did you, because of the extra facilities that you had there, did you again notice a shift in the athletes in terms of their mindset? Because I've always kind of thought that if you've just got like stripped right back the absolute basics, a 6-lane 25-meter grotty pool, you will still get the odd person who's like so motivated that they'll never let their standards slip. But for a lot of people, that sort of environment could lead to a slip in standards. So did you find again a shift in a raise in standards because of all of these facilities that you had?
It was quite a unique setup, right? Say I moved there now, where the program's been running for close to 10 years, and there's a lot more history, and sort of like there's a set structure to it because it was new. When I first got there were 2 swimmers in the program. That was it.
Right. And
so we had to grow the program from scratch, and I knew that. I didn't go in expecting a pool of like 20 athletes. I knew it would be a slow burner. And so to answer your question, I guess to start with, it was on a par with the level of athlete that I was working with at Davencio, albeit, like you say, we were in the best facilities possible. And I think the athletes appreciated and respected that. And so their standards were nudged up because they knew, they could come out of the pool and go to the nutrition recovery room, and it's just full of fridges with shakes, and, they can blenders, and they can make, smoothies. They were, I don't want to say spoiled, because they did appreciate what they got, but it was, you couldn't have wanted anything else in terms of that high performance environment. Mm-hmm. So I think the level of athlete might have been similar to the top end of what I had at Davencio, but they were very grateful and respectful of the environment and what they had. And because of that, it enhanced their effort levels and their commitment to what we were trying to do with the program.
Yeah. No, that sounds good. So you say you were there for a year. Was that only because the Loughborough opportunity then came up to move back, or did you always want it to be a short-term move?
No, it's exactly that. It's exactly because of the Loughborough opportunity. So when we went there, we bought a house in Canada. So we'd been for a couple of visits, my wife and I, because obviously the kids were very young at the time. We knew it was a big move. It wasn't just me as a single guy, dropping everything and leaving. So we went with the intention that it was going to be, long term, if not for good. And like I say, bought the house. The kids got settled into school and kindergarten out there, and we really did. We made a huge effort to just immerse ourselves and adjust to the Canadian lifestyle. And then out of the blue, got a call in probably. So I started there in start of September 2015. Got a call from my old coach Ian Armiger at Loughborough, who was back there coaching at the time, telling me that he was retiring, and I was one of a few names they were looking at. Would I be interested in coming back? And that was a really difficult call to receive. Yeah, on the one hand, it's the job I'd always wanted to do. Yeah. From the moment I started coaching, I said this is where I want to coach. On the other hand, we'd been in Canada then for 6-7 months. Settled, things were going well, the program was growing, we were getting results. I could see a future there. And that was a really few tough conversations, I guess, that we had to have in terms of what do we do here. And ultimately then, it was sad to only be there for a year. I think I was made to feel really, really welcome by everyone in Swim Ontario, the local coaches, the athletes I was working with, Swim Canada. Really made to feel welcome. So, felt I was letting them down a little bit, not even a little bit, a lot. But ultimately, it was the job I'd always wanted to do. And it was the one job when we left that we said, look, if this comes up, we'll come back. I wouldn't have come back to go back into a club environment. I felt that part of my coaching career was done. I'd kind of achieved what I wanted to in that respect in terms of the age group youth side of things, and felt that was something I didn't want to go back into. But this was the one job that I said, we'd go back for this. And it came up, just a few months after having left. So that was a tough one, but it was the right decision. It's proven that now over the last, I've been there. This is my 7th season as a coach in the program. And obviously, as you said earlier, since 2018, I've been director of.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And real shame, I suppose, that you only had a year out there. But I guess was there anything that you kind of learned while you're out there, or are there things that you've taken from that experience out in Canada that you've brought to Loughborough to obviously improve things at the university?
So I think the use of support services, although we had it to an extent at Deventure a little bit, it was very much, dribs and drabs, just small amounts. But to have that level of support service, and for me to actually see, right, how can I best utilize these people and the skills they have to enhance the athletes and the journey each athlete's on in terms of their development. So I think, for the first time, we had an amazing biomechanist that worked with me pretty much full time in program in Canada. And that use of like video and technical analysis is something that is, we've kept, it was at Loughborough anyway, but it's something that we place such a high regard on. But just that overall use of support services, so utilising the people there and the skills they have to add value to what we're trying to do with the athletes.
Sounds good. So sort of taking away the swimmers that you currently have now, because I think it'd be unfair to ask this question given the current crop you've got. Who's the best swimmer you've ever coached? Again, minus the swimmers that you're currently coaching now.
So pre-Loughborough?
Yeah.
I had a group of athletes at Deventure that all happened to be breaststrokers of similar age that were coming through at the same time. So, God, if I had to nail it down on one, that would be tough. I guess the two standouts I'd say that were probably most enjoyable to coach was Molly Renshaw and Abby Wood.
Right.
So they were two that came through the program with me at Deventure and have gone on to achieve great things. And that's not to undermine anything else anyone did under me at Deventure, but those two would stand out in terms of my pre-Loughborough coaching.
Yeah, sounds good. So I want to talk about your own swimming journey now in the pool itself, and then we'll come to your current squad kind of afterwards. So where did the whole swimming thing begin for you? Like, how old were you when you first started swimming with a club?
Yeah, pretty early. I mean, my memories are of having swimming lessons, like, everyone gets started into it. And then I don't remember how that transitioned into a club, but I grew up down on the outskirts of London. And so the first club I swam at was Barnet Copthall.
Oh, yeah.
So I remember swimming there, as a youngster before the family moved to Marlborough, to Wiltshire, when I was about 11 years old. And so, I guess most of my swimming memories are from swimming at Marlborough Penguins, where, made some amazing friends and that, still in touch with now. But I was never an exceptional swimmer at that age. I think I look back on it now and I was lazy. I didn't have the work ethic needed to be successful. I probably had the opportunities to do so. I was in a club where there were some really good swimmers that came through there, albeit probably only on about 4 or 5 sessions a week. Mm. But I even remember, even though I was a little lazy and even though I wasn't hugely successful, I always remember having such a passion for it. Maybe a couple of times in that period where, I had to be sort of persuaded to keep going and was probably ready to jack it all in. But I think my mum and dad were amazing at certainly not forcing me to do it, but encouraging me to keep going and trying to get that enjoyment factor more than anything. And then it was I probably started to get momentum in terms of swimming as fast as I wanted to, probably when I was around 16 or 17, is when I probably realised that actually the harder I work, the more medals or more PBs I swim, and it finally clicked. And so I really then started to apply myself to it. Now I think, looking back on it, I think the damage was done. I probably had that period of 11 to 15 where being lazy and not applying myself cost me. But around that 16, 17 time is when I started then qualifying for nationals and starting to win medals at, regional levels and things like that. And that's when Loughborough was then like, I remember a teacher at school suggesting, well, if you're interested in sport and you're a good swimmer, why not look at this? I'd never even heard of Loughborough. And then, got my A levels and made my way over to Loughborough as an 18-year-old to study and swim. And that's when, again, as a swimmer, I kind of took off and, limited success still. I'm certainly nowhere near the swimmer level that the athletes I coach now. But first and foremost, that enjoyment and passion for it was always there. There was never any doubt that's what excited me the most in terms of being in that pool. And I enjoyed by that point training hard.
Yeah, I mean, you've certainly not underachieved on a master's stage. I've got it written down here. You've got 4 British records that still stand to this day. So 2 of those are in the 25 to 29 age group category. That's the 100 free and the 200 free. 49.58 for your 100 free, which is exceptional. Short course, of course. And for the 200 it's 149.94, and then you've also got 2 records in the next age group up, so the 30 to 34, so that's again the 100 free and 100 IM. So I mean, that's incredible. 4 British records, and I'll be honest, I just looked at the short course. Are you aware of any long course ones? I'm not sure. Maybe 100 free long course. I think I went a 51 something at a European Masters meet, but yeah, so at the time, the 49.5 was a Masters world record at the time. I think when I said it, and I don't think it lasted very long, but nevertheless, that was, I guess, a nice achievement to have. But yeah, a lot of those times there are actually PB. So I actually got quicker having left Loughborough, and it used to drive Ian, my old coach, mad because I obviously stayed in touch with him, and he's still heavily involved at Loughborough now, but it used to drive him mad that I was doing sort of 9 sessions a week with him and 5 land sessions, and went away, started coaching full time, got in and swam, 4 or 5 times a week, lunchtimes in public sessions. And I would turn up at national short course or a masters meet and just seem to get quicker and quicker. What do you put that down to? Because I've heard a few masters swimmers that have got a similar kind of story where they've absolutely drained themselves, perhaps as an age group swimmer or in their early 20s, and then actually when they've taken their foot off the gas a little bit, they've somehow got quicker. Is that sort of similar for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and obviously, Ian Armiger did an amazing job coaching me through most of my time at Loughborough, and so obviously that physiological architecture was there. I'd had years and years of building that base, and I was in decent shape. I think then when I left, I could refine it and do it however I wanted to, because I wasn't, as you well know, when you're in a squad and there's 24 of you in a 6-lane pool or 16 of you in a 4-lane pool, which we had at times at Loughborough, it's tough to make it totally individual now, and that's not to criticize any coach, because it's very hard. And so I was swimming PBs constantly through my time at Loughborough, but it was that period then when I left that I could refine what I was doing. So obviously I had all that knowledge of having worked under Ian and under Mike Perrybroom before him, but I was able to just take what I knew now as a coach as well and sort of coach myself. So I wasn't getting any technical input, but I was able to just do the sets that I felt made me feel good, made me feel fast, not push myself to that point that I was getting too beat up. But having had that background of, 6 years of being at Loughborough with that, doing a constant 55, 60 kilometers a week, that then, that goes for something. You don't lose that straight away. And so what I could do, for instance, if I got in one day and was warming up and had a set in mind to do and felt terrible, I could just change it.
Yeah.
Well, that's not going to work today. So, or if I felt totally terrible, right, I'm going to get out and try again tomorrow.
Yeah.
So I could do it my way. I was swimming in public lanes, luckily the place I swam at was pretty quiet. And yeah, just for the next sort of, I guess, next 5 5 or 6 years, I just kept getting quicker and quicker, which was great. I just, I loved it.
Yeah. So go on, give us an example then of a perfect Andi Manley set at that point in your life. You said you could refine it to what you enjoyed doing. So what would a session look like for you?
Yeah, well, we do, and it's stuff I still do now with my swimmers. Actually, we do stuff what we call like rainbow sets. So we use a system of intensity based on colours. So a rainbow set would be going through a really big descent, a big range within a session, and I really like those. And I've used those from when I started coaching in Swindon, and we did one actually this morning with our international guys at Loughborough. So they're things that I still like doing now as an athlete, and so it would be, an example of a set might be something like, I don't know, 350s freestyle, which would be fairly steady, just on like 50. And then something like a 250, which would descend, 1 to 8. So it'd be 8 rounds of 350s and a 250. And a 250 would have to get quicker and quicker and quicker. And there's loads of ways to design that and, play around with it. You could do it as IM. You can, I do it largely as freestyle. But they were challenges that I really like getting my teeth into, that going through a full range within a session, so you're starting light aerobic and finishing up really fast. So use them as a swimmer when I was swimming myself, use them now. And the swimmers really like that, embrace that challenge of working through those various energy systems.
Yeah. And how many sort of meters were you doing a week when you're kind of hitting these big PBs?
So still quite a lot, I guess, for a master swimmer, but I'd say a normal week in that period where I was swimming my best as a master swimmer was probably 5 swim sessions a week, and probably I'd say between 20 and 25 kilometers. So I was getting in, and I might do a week of 5K sessions.
Yeah.
I would very rarely do more than 5K. And some sessions, if it was speed work or I might have been busy on time because I was obviously working full time then. The 2 things I'd say that made a massive difference, all right, when people ask me, is one is I raced a lot, like very, very frequently. So I was in the club at Swindon where I'd honestly say like 26 out of 52 weeks in the year, there'd be some competition at the weekend. Now, a lot of them I just joined in with, the swimmers liked it. I was, the head coach is swimming in the team. So if it was Arena League, there you go, got 3 rounds of that. Then in Wiltshire, we'd have had like what used to be called the Winter League. There were 4 rounds of that. And then there were 4 rounds of a Summer League. So straight away, you're at 11 galas, if you like. But there aren't, they're just Saturday evening things.
Yeah.
But then you'd have county championships and county masters championships, which were separate. And then you'd have regional championships and regional masters championships. And so I was racing loads, and it kept me sharp, and it kept the speed element of that in there, because you can try and replicate that in training, but ultimately, racing is the ultimate way to sort of really test yourself and push to those upper ends. So that was one thing I think that really helped. And the second thing was the strength program that I was doing, that I was in the gym, 3 to 4 times a week, lifting really heavy. For me, sorry, like not heavy in the grand scheme of things, but, in terms of me, I was getting stronger and stronger. And again, I had the time to do that. Was lifting with other people that were in the Swindon team at the time, in the Masters group. And so they were the 2 things that really added to that. So although my actual pull volume was a fraction of what I was doing at Loughborough, and I was swimming 4 or 5 times a week rather than 9, I think combined with the gym program and combined with the frequent racing was the reason that I was able to keep moving on and setting those PBs.
That's great. And so obviously we said at the start of this podcast that we met at the Etwall competition, but that was your first competition for quite a long time on the master space, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, so I swam a relay back in 2019 with a group of guys that I trained with at Lunchtime at Loughborough. But individually, I've not raced for a very long time. See, I was trying to work it out, and I think the last time I probably would have raced individually was probably 2009. I want to say. So yeah, probably 2009. So yeah, when we met at that competition, the Masters competition, that was my first individual race for a very long time.
Yeah,
and that's kind of happened as a result of my kids getting into swimming, and the sort of like family rivalry that's sort of like created here with a little bit of challenge from my eldest son there. And I think the way I look at it is if I'm going to spend, a weekend at a swim meet, sat in the balcony while they're racing, if it's an event I can swim, I might as well race myself, because it's certainly more fun. It breaks the day up a bit more for me. It gives me reason to stay in shape. I'm 46 years old now, and I think I don't like running. I did it during lockdown and had to do it because it was a way of sort of keeping in shape, but I hated it.
Yeah.
So I still enjoy being in the pool. I still enjoy swimming and training. And so it was never the intention to really get back into racing. But I think as a result of my kids doing it and getting more enjoyment out of what they do, I've actually really enjoyed dipping back into it.
Oh, that's really good. And you say that you swim with a group of people at lunchtimes at Loughborough. So are you still kind of doing 4 or 5 sessions a week, or is it a little bit more casual than that now?
No, at the moment I'm trying to. So this week I've managed to do Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So if I can get one more in tomorrow, that's really good. Great. I'm certainly not up at 5K sessions anymore. It's a little bit less than that. But yeah, I think a few years ago, the intention would have been to swim, at lunchtime every day, but I'd find reasons or excuses not to. Whereas now I'm actually the opposite. I'll find reasons and make a way to make sure I can get in. So I block out the time in my diary. So if people are asking for meetings, between 11 and 12, which is when I try and get in, or 12 and 1, I just block that time out. So I protect that to make sure I put my health, my well-being first, so that I can sort of stay in shape. First and foremost, it's about me trying to stay healthy.
Yeah.
Rather than me trying to prepare to, go and swim best times, which certainly ain't happening. But you know what I mean? It's about health rather than performance. But I have enjoyed getting back in and doing the last few competitions, putting those racing shorts back on, feeling that little bit of, butterflies in the stomach, and, not more than ever, unsure of what the outcome's going to be, because I really had no point of reference on where I was going to be. But yeah, I really enjoyed getting back into it.
Oh, that's good. I'm glad. So let's talk about the current squad that you coach then. Talk to us about some of the swimmers that you've got and kind of where they're at on the world stage.
Okay, yeah. So our high performance squad at Loughborough is 24 athletes. Pretty much all of those are studying. So 21 out of 24 are student athletes currently on courses at the university. So I'm responsible for 12 of those, and my group is sort of middle distance up into distance and open water. And then Ian Hume, who I co-coach the group with, he's then middle distance down into the sprint athletes. So we've got that kind of nice distinction within the group. I think the big thing that's different about what we're doing at Loughborough with that group is over half of them are actually international athletes, non-British. And that was a strategy of ours a few years ago, to make a conscious decision to go out and recruit international athletes. British Swimming do a great job, in terms of the national centres at Bath and in Stirling and at Loughborough, of taking care of the majority of British talent. Now, some still choose to swim with us, and the sort of the 11 or 12 in our high performance group are excellent British athletes, many of whom are on the world class programme with British Swimming. But it's those international ones that have really been a game changer for us, in terms of moving the level of Loughborough swimming to the new heights, I suppose. So my group I've got international people there's a guy called Andreas Vasaios from Greece, he's the European record holder for 200 IM short course. He goes 1 minute 50 for a 200 IM, wow. Which is pretty impressive, right? So. And he's just an outstanding swimmer. He's just a points machine for us when we go to the Bucks Championships, the University Championships, because he can certainly short course. He can swim anything you wanted him to, and he would be exceptional. I think, we went, I think 18 months ago to Bucks short course, and he set sort of 7 new records. He was going 50 point for 100 back, 45 for the 100 free, 49 for the 100 fly, things like this. And just he'd get out of one race, he'd have 20 minutes rest, he'd be straight back in. And so he's an outstanding athlete and a pleasure to work with. I've got a guy from Austria called Felix Ubeck, finished 4th at the Olympics, made 3 Olympic finals in the 400, 800, 1500, and he was world short course champion in the 400 free. I've been fortunate to be a part of that Austrian team with Felix since he's been with us. So they take me to all the major championships as part of their team.
Yeah.
And other than not speaking German at all, I've that's been fitted in great with what they do, and Felix has been able to move things on. And then we've had a swimmer join us a few years ago who's on a really upward trajectory. A guy called Dan Whiffin, who's from Ireland, who he won a silver medal at the Commonwealth Games last summer in the 1500 freestyle, and then went and broke the European record in December for the 800 freestyle short course. So I guess I could go through all 12 of my athletes. I mean, all 12 of them either do or have swum internationally, and that's the first time in my coaching where my entire group is of an international level.
Mm.
And then if we flip onto the sprint middle distance side with Ian Hume, that the group is, just equally as good with the people you've got. You've got two Swedish sisters, Louise and Sophie Hansen, who are just outstanding athletes. And again, I could list all 12 for you and how fast they swim. And it is an exceptional group. Every one of those 24 swimmers is outstanding. And I have to, sometimes remind myself of that when you walk out onto poolside and see the caliber of athlete you're working with and the sort of journey we have taken them on or are taking them on. It's a real privilege to work with those sort of people.
It sounds absolutely stunning. It really does. And I can imagine you do have to pinch yourself every so often when you think about how far you've come as well. And take yourself back to that guy at university who wasn't quite sure what he wanted to do. And here you are now with some of the best swimmers in the world. So that's incredible to hear. So yeah, nice one for that. In terms of, as a coach, what do you look for in a swimmer? And I guess I'm not just talking about the elite swimmers. I think at any level, really, what are the principles that you look for in a swimmer? So, I mean, the number one thing, this is really hard to quantify, is and I hear this term a lot, is like their coachability. All right. And you might ask me, well, what does that mean? And I'm going to try and explain, but it's, it's hard to quantify, but I'm just after an athlete. So let's take Andreas as an example. So he came into us sort of 2.5 years ago as a guy that was multiple NC2A champion in the US, European record holder, multiple, European short course champion. And you might think with somebody like that they'd come in and they'd be quite set in their ways. Well, this is what makes me good. This is what I want to do. But he came in and one of the first meetings was, well, what do you think you need to be successful is what I asked him. And he's like, well, you're my coach now. So you tell me what I need to do and I'll do it. Okay.
And so you've got an athlete that's swimming a 150 for a 200 IM and, and all the times he swims, but he's so coachable. He's like, you're my coach. Let's you tell me what needs to be done. And they're very open-minded. Felix is the same. Guy that comes in that's NC2A champion, has been to 2 Olympics previously, but they're very open to like, well, this is how I want to change your turn, or I think we need to try this from a nutritional point of view, or I want to change your S&C plan to this. And I've never had resistance on that. They're very coachable. If you suggest or give feedback, they take it in the way it's intended.
Yeah.
And the flip side of that, my frustrations as a coach, having worked with people, not necessarily now at Loughborough, because I think we have a really good culture in terms of don't behave this way, but probably previously at certain times, is people who are closed off to that.
Yeah.
Or people who see feedback as a personal attack. The reason we're giving feedback is to try and help you get better, not to try and attack you and say, well, you're terrible at this, but it's how the message is received sometimes. Mm-hmm. And so to answer your question, what I look for in a coach, it's that how open and honest are these people? How coachable are they? How receptive are they to feedback? And that for me, more than anything, is vital.
Yeah, no, that sounds fantastic. In terms of Paris 2024, then, what are your hopes for your swimmers? Are there a number of swimmers that you're hoping will make it?
Yeah, definitely. And I think again, we're at a point where making it is probably is one part of it, but we are looking at medals. There's no other way around it. Right now when we have a coaches meeting and we forward plan in terms of what our goals are, of course there's going to be some athletes that their goal is, can we qualify for that Paris Olympic team? but we're setting our sights on medals, and I'm not going to say a number, or, we know a number, but, in terms of a team, that's the route we're now looking at. Whereas probably 4 years ago, or would it, be less than that, but as we were heading towards into Tokyo, and even previously with the program, it was about, right, how many people can we put on a team? Well, they're not conversations we have anymore. It's like, right, how many people can we put in finals, or how many medals could we win? And by doing that, it pushes the whole level up, because then the people who perhaps were maybe on the fringe of wanting to make it, or not sure if they could, if you're training in a lane with someone who's, just broken a European record, or is number one ranked in their event in the world, for 2022, then you're setting your sights higher, because you're training with them day in, day out. You're seeing the best and worst of these other people, and you realise that you can be part of that too. So, as I say, we've got 24 in the group, and you could probably chat to, I would say, 22 out of 24 of them would say, I want to be in Paris. Now, clearly, not everyone is going to be, because it doesn't work like that. It's sport, and it's not as simple as that. But we're in that position where that is the goal that these guys are aiming at now, and that's really exciting to be part of that and taking people on that journey.
And just on a personal level, have you ever been to the Olympics as a coach with your swimmers before?
Yeah, so I was fortunate enough to be in Tokyo. So I was there with Felix, with the Austrian team. That was my first time being at Olympics and in the village, and sort of experiencing that whole circus of what that's all about. Now, obviously, COVID was still really impactful at that time. No crowds, there were restrictions, but having never been to an Olympics, I didn't really have a point of reference to compare it to. So I know other people that had been before who said, "Oh, well, it was different. Couldn't do this, couldn't do that." It wasn't different for me, because it was all new. And that was an incredible experience. I mean, finishing fourth was a real kick in the nuts. It was like that was really tough to take. Albeit the performances were amazing. What Felix did there, but just the result of the race, to finish so close to a medal, and so close to a gold medal, really. But that's the Olympics, and that's what happens. And I think, as a Loughborough team, the people we had there, we were so fortunate to have people, representing Sweden, France, Ireland, Austria, Greece, Kenya, Britain. It was amazing to have a real presence there from Loughborough, and just to be part of that and be part of that Olympic experience was amazing.
Oh, sounds fantastic. Well, all the best for Paris 2024. Obviously, I hope you have the success that you hope for. And also just want to say congratulations. It sounds like your career's going really well. You've got your dream job. That is fantastic. And you've had some brilliant experiences along the way. I'm so glad I met you. You're a top guy. So thank you very much. And thanks for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate it.
No, it's been great, Joe. Thanks very much.
Cheers.